Autumn 1882, outside of Dry Hollow, New Mexico territory. The wind shrieked, dragging sideways rain. The sky had split, turning the trail past Caleb Jericho's ranch into churning mud. This weather forced a man inward. Inside his sturdy house, Caleb stood by the window. His muscular arms crossed his broad chest. His set jaw, chiseled from granite, showed his will. Caleb Jericho, a titan 7 feet tall, was a monument to the West. His powerful frame was built by toil. He moved with quiet grace. His hands were vast, calloused, scarred. His straight back carried an invisible weight. His ash-gray eyes held deep weariness. Dark hair speckled with gray, not from age, but from sorrow rooted 3 years prior. 3 years. Malaria stole his wife, Rebecca. She was his softness. Her death sealed a part of Caleb, locking tenderness away. He never remarried. Only his son, Silas, remained. Silas, barely 10, was a quiet boy with old eyes, whip-smart and stubborn. He sat by the hearth, legs crossed, a tattered dime novel open. His dark hair caught the firelight, illuminating a face with his mother's delicate bone structure and Caleb's jaw hint. He was lost in fictional adventures, contrasting the howling world. Caleb didn't voice his fear, but watched Silas with desperation, fearing he might vanish. A tremor ran through his frame, a phantom ache. The first knock came sudden, sharp over the wind's howl, a jarring intrusion. Caleb's eyes flicked to the heavy oak door. Nobody came this far unless lost, crazy, or looking for trouble. His hand went to his Winchester rifle. The second knock was different, a plea, quieter, hesitant. It tugged at something deep within Caleb, something he thought died with Rebecca. He grabbed the rifle and pulled the door open. He saw a spectral figure, a woman, soaked, shivering. Clutched tight was a child, shielded from rain. The woman, perhaps early 30s, had harsh lines of fear. Her navy dress hung heavy. Her split boots were caked in mud. Her face was pale, drawn, streaked with water, rain or tears, indistinguishable. The girl, small and still, no more than 7, wrapped tight, succumbed, or asleep. "I ain't here to cause no trouble, mister," the woman rasped. Her weary eyes held a defiant glint. "Just need somewhere dry for the night, just for her." She shifted the child, a movement speaking volumes of fierce, protective love. Caleb didn't speak. His silence was vast. He studied her, measuring her like thunderclouds. He'd seen desperation, but the way she held that child, it snagged him. A memory of his own vulnerable boy. "I'll sleep in the barn," she added, pleading. "We won't touch a thing, just a roof over her head. Out of this—" She gestured vaguely at the tempest, hand trembling. The child whimpered, burying her face deeper. That did it. That small, helpless whimper piercing the storm shattered Caleb's indifference. He recognized that sound of true need. Without a word he stepped back, swinging the heavy door wider, rifle loosely held. He pointed to the sturdy barn. It would be dry enough. The woman nodded once, eyes too tired for hope, yet profound with gratitude. She adjusted the girl and walked slowly through the gate. Caleb hadn't realized Silas had opened it. He turned to see his son on the porch, barefoot, hair damp, mouth parted. "She's got a kid," Silas whispered, thin against the wind, eyes wide. "Not our concern," Caleb rumbled, rougher than intended, a shield. But he didn't close the door. His gaze lingered on the retreating figures, 2 huddled forms against the angry storm. A heavy question settled. What desperation drove them? What would happen once the storm passed? An open loop, nagging him. Later, as rain subsided, Caleb moved through the twilight. He brought a folded wool blanket, Rebecca's, faintly lavender-scented, and a tin cup of fresh water to the barn. He left them inside on clean straw without a word. He didn't look in. He retreated, the barn door creaking shut, echoing like a new chapter beginning. Back in the house, Silas was awake, curled under a quilt, his book abandoned. His keen eyes met Caleb's. "Will they stay long?" Silas murmured. "Just the night," Caleb replied, gruff, definitive, though he doubted his own words. He stared at the dancing flames and thought about the woman. Serafina. He felt a strange recognition. He thought how she held Lyra. Not a burden, but something precious, holy, a reverence he hadn't seen since Rebecca. And the thought, unbidden, was an open loop. What would it take for a woman to value a life so fiercely? Inside the barn, Serafina tucked Lyra into fresh hay. The soft, thick blanket was a miracle cocooning her daughter. Serafina's fingers were numb, her body sore from walking 20 miles. But Lyra was dry. That was all that mattered. The barn smelled of horses, hay, and dust, but it was warm, insulated, and blessedly safe. Serafina sank beside her daughter, exhaustion a physical blow. She listened to the storm diminish, then silence. She'd expected to be turned away. He hadn't said a word, that giant Caleb Jericho, but he hadn't shut the door. He'd merely pointed. It was enough, for now. But his ash-gray eyes were an open loop. What did he see? Why sanctuary? The next morning, Caleb stepped out early. The air was cold, sharp with wet sage and frost. He moved to the corral. His gaze swept the property, snagging on the barn. The door was open, a crack. He paused, a massive sentinel, watching. Minutes stretched. Then it creaked wider. Serafina stepped out, barefoot, holding Lyra's hand. They looked smaller in the stark dawn, less desperate, more fragile. Serafina's unbound hair fell in dark waves. Lyra held herself with cautious curiosity. Serafina saw him. Her gaze met his across the damp yard. No wave, no hesitant smile. Instead, a small, challenging nod. Her voice, steadier, carried. "Name's Serafina," she called. "This here's Lyra." Caleb didn't answer. He simply nodded once from the porch, acknowledgement and continuation of his silence. He watched them, a strange tug in his chest. Inside, Silas watched from the kitchen window, clutching his book. "They ain't going yet," he whispered, a statement. He was right. The silence, observation, and unasked questions hung in the air, an open loop stretching into the uncertain day. The morning sun came up like an apology, soft, golden, slowly burning off the cold. By then, the barn door was always open, an unspoken truce. Serafina rose early. By the time Caleb was at the corral feeding stock, she had swept the loft clean, folded the borrowed blanket meticulously. Lyra's worn shoes warmed in sunlight. He never told her to do any of it. Caleb was not a man of many words, but every chore she touched, Serafina did with quiet purpose, a meticulousness hinting at a deep need for order. She was clean, quiet, careful, her movements efficient, soundless. She kept to herself, rarely near the main house, yet never too far, just near enough for Caleb to notice. He noticed small things, how she washed Lyra's hands, painstakingly picked burrs from Lyra's socks, checked the girl's hair for lice nightly, small, deliberate acts of fierce, unwavering love that spoke volumes. They were anchors in a chaotic world, and he found himself watching for them. The sight of her bent over Lyra stirred a flicker in his heart, a question. Could such quiet strength mend something truly broken? An open loop hummed beneath his routine. On the third morning, a tentative shift. Serafina approached him as he mended a bridle. "Could I help with the horses, mister?" she asked, soft but without hesitation. Caleb grunted. Not a yes, not a no. By noon, she had scrubbed troughs till they gleamed, shoveled 2 stalls with strength, and organized tack hooks by size. Without being told, she moved with innate understanding of ranch work, a quiet competence that impressed him. "She's working like she owns the place," Silas remarked, observing from the corral fence. Caleb looked over from the chicken coop. Serafina was bent over the hay bin, sleeves rolled, cheeks flushed. "She's got grit," he said, his highest praise. Silas glanced down. "Lyra says she's only had 1 pair of boots since last winter." Caleb nodded. He'd noticed the cracked soles. He'd also noticed how Serafina always put Lyra's needs before her own, a constant, unspoken sacrifice that resonated deeply. The child's quiet resilience, fostered by her mother's fierce will, was another thread weaving into his solitary life. That night, the barn floor offered a surprising stage for friendship. Lyra and Silas sat cross-legged, whispering secrets and giggling over a lopsided doll Silas had sewn from flour sackcloth. They weren't quite siblings, but had begun that intricate dance children do until comfort simply stuck. Their laughter, light and unburdened, drifted from the barn like something rare. From the porch, Caleb watched them. He stood for a long while, the laughter a faint, sweet melody he hadn't heard in years. A phantom ache stirred in his chest. He watched Lyra and Silas, captivated by her companionship. Their easy joy felt like an intrusion, yet something else, something he couldn't name, but that pulled at him. Finally, with a sigh, he turned and headed inside. The lamp glowed softly. Serafina was bent over the stove, stirring beans, their savory aroma filling the space. He'd planned to eat them cold, but she had warmed them, adding dried herbs, transforming simple fare into comfort. "You didn't have to," he said, his voice deep. She didn't turn. "I know," she replied, soft, matter-of-fact, just quiet understanding. Caleb stood awkward. Then, with a grunt, he pulled down a bottle of corn whiskey. He poured 2 fingers into a tin cup, then a second. Wordless, he held one out to Serafina. She finally turned, her dark, discerning eyes meeting his. "Didn't peg you for a drinking man, mister." "I ain't," he said, the lie a habit. "But figured it's colder." He was offering a truce, a moment of shared quiet. She took the cup. Their fingers came close. They drank in silence, leaning on opposite ends of the hearth, the fire popping. The whiskey bit down hard and warm. Caleb cleared his throat. "You from around these parts?" The question felt clumsy. Serafina shook her head, staring into the flames. "Texas-born, Goliad County." Her voice was low. "Came west after the fever took my folks." Her gaze drifted. "Maybe Colorado, but the passes were iced, so we drifted." He watched her. "You and the girl?" She nodded. "Lyra." Her paw. "Gone on." She didn't explain. Caleb didn't push. He understood the weight of dead men. After a long pause, she looked at him, a faint, knowing curve to her lips. "You got that look." "What look?" he grunted. "The one folks get when they think I'm needing pity." Her voice was soft, challenging. "I wasn't thinking that," Caleb replied, firm. "You were wondering why I stayed." It wasn't a question. Her voice dropped, raw with honesty. "Truth is, I ain't asking for charity, mister. Never have. Just a place where my girl can sleep without flinching, where she doesn't hide when she hears boots." Caleb stared at the fire, a sudden cold knot tightening. Silas had slept with a pistol after Rebecca passed. He swallowed hard. "Ain't much comfort here," he admitted. "Just fences and chores, and loneliness that can swallow a man whole." "Comfort's a luxury," Serafina said, setting her empty cup down. Her unwavering eyes met his. "Safety, that's what I'm looking for her." They sat with that between them, like a taut thread. Neither dared to tug. The quiet deepened shared understanding, an unspoken pact. Caleb found himself wondering, what had Lyra seen to flinch? What demons haunted Serafina's past? Questions hung, open loops keeping him from settling. The next morning, the porch was swept clean. Freshly washed linens hung drying on the line, snapping in the breeze. The faint scent of soap drifted. Lyra played with Silas near the water trough, small forms silhouetted. Laughter, bright, carried as Silas awkwardly showed Lyra how to lasso a chicken. Serafina stood nearby, calm, always watching. As Caleb passed them, he tipped his hat slightly. She nodded back. No words, but something shifted, softened. A quiet acceptance. The ranch, once a fortress, seemed to breathe easier. That evening, after a flavorful supper, Silas whispered, "Can they stay longer?" Lyra was asleep. Caleb didn't answer right away. He looked out the window where Serafina knelt, brushing dirt from Lyra's hem. He drained his coffee and said quietly, "We'll see." It was as close to an affirmative as Silas would get. "Lyra makes me laugh," Silas added soft. Caleb didn't respond directly. His gaze returned to Serafina kneeling by the sleeping child. He saw her unwavering protection. He saw the strain in her face, weariness, but deep strength. An unsettling thought whispered, "What if 'we'll see' was not enough? What if the world still had a claim on them?" The vast, indifferent land reminded him of fragility. The dry wind had changed its tune, carrying sun-warmed sage and something sweeter, elusive, hope, perhaps, or dust. By the end of that first week, Lyra and Silas were inseparable. They trailed each other, climbing fences and sharing spoons. When Serafina's stew pot ran low, Silas, pragmatic, offered a solution. "Have you had cornbread with honey, Lyra?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "Never had honey. Period." "Well then," Silas declared, chest puffing, "we got to fix that." They made a pact under the gnarled cottonwood tree. Pinky fingers locked, a childish vow, shoes kicked off, bare toes wiggling. The air was thick with dry grass, distant mesquite, and boundless optimism. Serafina noticed subtle shifts, Silas calling her Miss S., then with ease, a comfort. She never corrected him. The quiet hum of their familiarity was an open loop in her guarded heart. Could this peace last? One evening, Caleb found them bent over a broken seed sack. Lyra and Silas giggled, hands tangled as Serafina patiently patched it. Her brow was furrowed, a faint smile. He leaned on the doorframe, watching, silent, imposing. When Serafina glanced up, he gave a nod. Recognition. Acknowledgement of the small miracle taking root. The ranch, once solitary, now held a new, fragile rhythm. Caleb worked the herd and fences. But now, returning, silence was softened by distant voices, cooking smells, the quiet presence of others. Serafina, meanwhile, had taken to the neglected garden. The soil was dry and stubborn, but not dead. With elbow grease, a borrowed shovel, and forgotten compost, she coaxed life from it. Green shoots curled up, zucchini, turnip, squash. She caught Caleb watching from the corral, expression unreadable, and offered a wry smile. "Still got a few miracles left in this land." He'd tipped his hat in reply, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Then came the fever, sudden, insidious, quiet in the morning, dangerous by dusk. Lyra was fine at breakfast, but by sundown, burning up, limp in Serafina's arms. Serafina didn't panic. She'd survived worse, but this felt different. Lyra didn't respond, hot and heavy. Her breath came fast, shallow. "Caleb!" she called, sharp with urgency. She burst through the back door, Lyra limp, eyes wide with plea. He looked up from his meal, saw the child, and asked no questions. He just moved. His massive frame moved with alarming speed. Upstairs, in Rebecca's untouched room, Caleb dug through a wooden box. Inside were faded vials of herbs. Then, a small blue tin of quinine powder. "My wife used this," he gravelled, "for Silas, when the fever came." They sat by the barn fire, flickering lamplight casting shadows. Lyra lay on blankets, trembling. Serafina, pale, soaked clothes in cold water, pressing them gently to her daughter's forehead. Caleb, hunched, poured quinine into a tin cup, mixing it with boiled water. He waited, gaze fixed on Lyra's face, for her lips to part. She took a sip, then another, but her glazed eyes didn't open. "Stay with me, baby," Serafina whispered, raw, close to breaking. "You hold on." Caleb sat beside her, shoulders touching, his hard body a solid presence against their shared fear. "She's a strong one," he rumbled. "She is." Serafina rested her head briefly against his arm. Her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. "I've done everything I could," she said, fragile. "If she goes, I got nothing left." "She ain't going," Caleb said, unyielding, a promise. "Not tonight." He moved his hand, brushing Lyra's feverish brow, a touch of tenderness. They stayed silent, waiting, breathing to the girls' shallow inhales and exhales. The barn was still, save for the fire's crackle and their breathing. Outside the wind picked up, a mournful dirge, but muted. Time became fluid, agonizing. Sometime after midnight, Lyra stirred. A twitch of fingers, then a soft sound, a fragile breath. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened. "Mama?" Serafina choked a laugh and a sob, wet, shaking relief. "I'm right here, my heart." Lyra's small hand reached out, blindly. It found Caleb's knee. He covered it gently with his own. "You scared me, Missy," he murmured, gruff tenderness. Lyra smiled faintly, weak but bright. "Don't be scared, Mr. Caleb. I just had a hot dream." Caleb chuckled low, warm. Serafina laughed too, wet and shaking, tears flowing freely. By dawn the fever had broken. The barn was quiet. Serafina curled around Lyra, breathing in her damp hair, holding her close. Caleb sat against a post, eyes closed, boots stretched out, hat tilted, a silent guardian resting. He hadn't left, not once. When Silas padded in, sleepy-eyed, clutching his doll, he saw them all, his father, the woman, the girl. A tableau of quiet strength and connection. He stood for a moment, then said quietly, "This feels like a real family." No one corrected him. The words hung in the air, a declaration, a question, and a terrifying open loop. What would family mean on this desolate frontier? Dawn offered no immediate answers. The wind had truly changed. It carried sun-warmed sage and something sweeter, elusive. Hope, perhaps, or dust. News traveled slow in Dry Hollow. Talk, scandalous, traveled fast, reaching every isolated corner. By the second week of Serafina and Lyra's stay, folks in Redemption Creek murmured. They whispered in the dry goods store, eyes darting. They muttered near the blacksmith's forge. "Caleb Jericho's got a woman out there," they said with curiosity and veiled judgment. "A widow, or a runaway, with a kid not his." Some spoke with interest, others with poison, sharp, condemning words fueled by idle minds and rigid moral codes. Whispers of widow or runaway hung, a dangerous, unresolved open loop. Caleb didn't go to town much. He preferred solitude, but even in his fortress, he felt the change. The postmaster avoided his eyes. Pastor Elkins nodded, tight-lipped, a cold greeting. Subtle shifts, cold shoulders, averted gazes, symptoms of growing gossip. It boiled over on a Thursday morning, the sun painting a fragile gold. Caleb, checking the fence line, heard hoof clatter. A lone rider, too fast, tore down the path, kicking up dust and spite. The man was lean, sharp-shouldered, dressed in stale city rags. His boots too clean, his jaw too tight, predatory. He reined in hard, his horse skidding. Caleb stepped off the porch, unfolding to his full height. His hand was close to his sidearm. Serafina came from the barn, apprehensive. Lyra's head peaked, eyes wide with fear. The man slid from his saddle, spat near Caleb's boots. "Serafina!" he barked, raw with venomous familiarity. She froze, body tensing, face draining white. Caleb took one step, squarely between them. His voice was a low growl, hard. "You know this man?" Serafina nodded once, eyes like steel. "Name's Lyle. We were married, long ago." Her voice was flat, dead. Lyle scoffed, sneering. "I got papers saying we still are. I ain't seen you in 5 years, but that doesn't change what's legal." His predatory eyes shifted to Lyra, now in view. "And that's my daughter. You got no right running off with her." "She ain't yours," Serafina hissed, voice rising, a flash of fire. "You left before she was born, never sent a letter, never asked after her. I got blood in her," he shouted, voice cracking, "and I got the right to take her home." Caleb stepped fully between them, his colossal frame a wall. His voice, lower, resonated, a warning. "You don't have a home, mister, not here, and that girl's got one now." Lyle bristled, face contorting. "Who the hell are you to say that?" "I'm the one who's been feeding her," Caleb said, unwavering, cold, sheltering her, holding her hand through fevered nights when you were God knows where. He stepped closer. She's my blood, Lyle repeated, pathetic. That doesn't make you her father, Caleb growled, with conviction. Silence fell, thick, dangerous, punctuated only by distant wind and Lyle's horse. Lyle's eyes, wide with fear, darted between Caleb's face and shoulders. He sneered, spat again, impotent, and took a tentative step closer. This ain't over. You're right, Caleb growled, hand tightening on his pistol. You come back near this place, Lyle, it'll be finished, for good. The threat hung, cold. Lyle backed off, bravado crumbling. He mounted his horse slowly, eyes darting one last time to Lyra, frozen, watching him with old, unsettling knowing. I'll be back with law, he muttered, a final, desperate threat, then spurred his horse and rode off. Serafina stormed back toward the barn, shoulders rigid with fury. Caleb followed. Wait, he called. She spun on her heel inside the dim barn, eyes blazing with raw anger. You think I'm some kind of project, huh? She spat, voice trembling. Some stray you get to protect? That ain't what this is, mister. Feels like it, she added bitterly. That ain't what this is, Caleb snapped back, his patience fraying. I didn't ask for this either. I was fine with things as they were. Words out, a desperate defense. Oh, I believe that, she said bitterly, dripping sarcasm. A man alone in his fortress of silence, not needing nobody. That's not fair, he rumbled, her words stinging. She laughed once, sharp, painful. You think giving me shelter makes you a savior? Her blazing eyes held deep pain. Caleb's jaw tightened. No, he said, voice dropping, gaining force. I think it makes me human. That stopped her. Anger flickered, replaced by stunned silence. He stepped closer, hands open, sincere. Look, I ain't good with saying things, he admitted, but Silas, he looks at you like he's got a mother again. He swallowed hard, profound vulnerability. And that little girl of yours? His gaze flickered to Lyra, watching. She sleeps without crying now. He paused, voice gaining a soft, persuasive quality. That means something, Serafina. Serafina swallowed hard, anger thinning, giving way to weary understanding. I don't know how to ask for things, she confessed, a whisper. But I know what I need, Caleb continued, gaze dropping to his boots, then rising to meet her unwavering eyes. I need someone who talks to Silas like he matters, not just about chores, but about his books, his dreams. He took a breath, words rushing out, raw. I need someone who turns dirt into food and silence into warmth. And damn it, Serafina, his voice cracked, achingly real, revealing loneliness. I need you. The barn was quiet, only the distant shriek of wind. Serafina stood, breath catching between caution and wonder. Then she exhaled, slow and steady, like she'd been holding her breath for 10 years. You don't get to need me, she said softly, barely audible, without also seeing me, Caleb. Truly seeing me. Not just what I can do for you, or for the boy. I see you, Caleb replied, firm, unwavering. I've been seeing you since that first night, standing there in the rain, holding that child like she was the last star. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. Instead, she nodded once, decisive. I'm not yours, Caleb, she stated, voice holding unbreakable strength, not unless I choose to be. He nodded back, understanding the boundaries. I ain't asking for that, just asking you to stay. A while longer. The words were a plea, stripped bare of pride. Serafina turned, gaze drifting to Lyra and Silas, huddled, giggling, drawing in the dust. They looked up, waved, smiles wide. She looked back at Caleb, myriad emotions warring. I'll stay, she said, soft, resolute. He smiled then, the first real one she'd ever seen, softening his face, crinkling his eyes. A rare, vulnerable sight. But not for you, she finished, a quiet challenge. For them. He simply nodded again, smile widening, silent agreement. Then she walked towards the children, leaving Caleb standing in the barn, monumental, rooted. His heart thudded. A new, terrifying hope bloomed. He stood, hoping "not for you" didn't mean never. And perhaps Lyle's lingering threat was an open loop that would tie them together, stronger than any legal paper. What would Lyle's law bring? How would Serafina truly choose when her past caught up? The future, unknown, beckoned with promise and peril. The days grew shorter, the sun less cruel. Mornings brought a chill. But behind the barn, under ancient cottonwoods, something warm was being built by children. 2 children with skinned knees and audacious dreams. Silas and Lyra were busy, absorbed in their grand architectural endeavor. They dragged sticks, hay, salvaged canvas to a hollow where tall grass grew wild and the wind was quieter. They called it the Little House. "It's for when we're grown," Silas explained, "so we can still live next door." "Always," Lyra giggled. "But we'll be old then, like 15 inches. Laughter. They built it as only children can, with crooked walls, a wobbly roof, more belief than blueprint. Serafina stitched 2 faded cloth scraps for a curtain. Caleb, surprising all, hammered a sturdy nail into a tree stump near the little house for a pretend lantern. His large hand moved with tenderness unnoticed by the children, but not by Serafina. Every night the 2 children sat inside, giggling, whispering secrets. Caleb watched it all from the fence line. He watched Silas slip his arm around Lyra, easy camaraderie warming him. He watched Serafina laugh truly, chasing away shadows. The ranch, once solitary, was slowly becoming a home, filled with children's laughter and an emerging bond. A part of him, the deepest, was terrified by its vulnerability. That night, under the oil lamp's glow, a new purpose settled over Caleb. He carved something small from gnarled mesquite wood, a rough wooden ring for meaning. His hunting knife moved slow and sure, each cut whispering a truth he hadn't dared say aloud, a promise he was grasping. Wood shavings filled the room, mingling with lamp oil. He worked late, the only sound the knife's rasp and the distant coyote howl, an open loop of unspoken yearning, taking tangible form. The next morning, before the sun rose, Caleb placed the ring on the stoop outside Serafina's door, wrapped in a clean cloth. No note, just the silent offering, a question etched in wood. She found it just after dawn, bare feet silent on the cold wood. She didn't smile. Her hand trembled as she picked up the bundle. She unwrapped it slowly, breath catching. She held it, the rough wood warm, her thumb brushing the unpolished grain. Its imperfections made it more real, more honest. A profound silence fell over her. What did it mean? A heavy question settled in her heart. Later that day, as the wind kicked up dust cyclones, Caleb stood by the porch rail, hands in pockets. His gaze was on the horizon, as if the land owed him an answer. He waited, immense, anticipating. Serafina joined him, her steps light. She wiped her hands on her apron, movements fluid, betraying nothing of the tremor in her heart. "You carve this?" she asked, soft, holding the wooden ring. He nodded once, terse. Didn't have gold. Didn't seem right anyway. Gold was fleeting. Wood, from this land, was rooted. She waited. Silence stretched, thick with possibilities. He didn't speak. His gaze remained fixed on the distant horizon towards the little house. Then he said, quiet, sure, weighted with years of longing, "Your daughter needs a home, Serafina, a real one. And my son wants a mother." Serafina turned to him, studying his weathered face. His mouth, usually thin, was softened by vulnerability, but his eyes, deep, ash-gray, tired, held her, unguarded, revealing longing that stunned her. She asked gently, "And what about you, Caleb?" He swallowed hard. He looked down at his boots, then back up at her, vast, unspoken needs pooling. "I want to stop pretending," he confessed, raw, aching. "I don't want more than just silence anymore." His voice cracked, achingly real, revealing the man beneath the giant. I want mornings with voices. I want laughter that ain't borrowed. I want a woman who knows the plants in the garden and can make them grow. And a girl who calls me Pa without me having to earn it with blood. He took a breath. I want this place to stop being just where I survive. I want it to start being where I live. The wind swept in, a sudden gust, lifting her skirt, brushing hair across her cheek. Serafina looked down at the wooden ring. It had flaws, tiny splinters, speaking of the hand that carved it. But it was honest, and that, in this harsh land, made it more sacred than any diamond. But she didn't say yes, not then, not with words. She simply stepped back, a single pace. She nodded once, a quiet affirmation holding 1,000 promises, and walked into the house, leaving him standing there. Caleb didn't follow. He just stood, his heart thudding, listening to the wind, hoping not now didn't mean never. The wooden ring, still warm from her hand, lay on the stoop, an open loop, a question hanging, awaiting resolution. What conflicts, what fears, still held her back? The morning came quiet, settling after something profound. It slid in with first golden light, a soft breeze rustling curtains, carrying scent of tilled earth. Serafina stirred, her back less sharp, testament to fitful sleep, haunted by questions and the feel of rough wood. For a moment she just breathed, savoring the comfort, the peace permeating her life. Then she heard it. Laughter. Low, rumbling, unmistakably Caleb's, mingled with a child's clear chime, a sound she had yearned for, never dared to dream of. She pushed herself up and stepped to the window. Outside, in the morning shade, Caleb knelt. His colossal frame gentle, folded, guiding Lyra's small hands. She fumbled with Silas's old bootlaces, tongue poking out, brow furrowed. Caleb's voice, patient, remarkably soft, stripped of gruffness. No, not over. Under, like you're tying a calf, just gentler. Lyra's face was a study in concentration. Silas stood beside them, arms crossed, a faint, indulgent smile. You got it, Lyra, he beamed. Told you he's better at knots than school books. Serafina smiled, something catching in her throat, a sudden tightness. It wrenched her heart. Caleb, the stoic giant, teaching Lyra. Silas, the quiet boy, accepting her. A picture of belonging, of a tender, fragile new beginning. Then Silas looked up, squinting, and without hesitation called out, "Ma!" Lyra's almost got her boots done. The word stopped Serafina cold. Not Miss S., not ma'am, just Ma. Natural, easy, like it had always belonged to her. Tears sprang fast, hot, unexpected, blurring the scene. She leaned into the windowsill, gripping the frame, anchoring herself to this fragile reality. She didn't answer, didn't need to. The children had gone back to giggling, oblivious to the profound shift their simple words had wrought. The word Ma echoed in her mind, an open loop, a new identity she had never thought to claim, now offered freely. That night, the dinner table was full, not extravagant, though hearty stew simmered, not fancy, but full of voices, clatter of tin cups, passing bowls, knocking elbows, second helpings, full of the easy rhythm of shared life, full of the way Caleb listened to every word, every anecdote, every quiet comment, like it mattered more than any ranch deal. Silas, emboldened, told a rambling story about a stubborn chicken. Lyra chimed in with her version, involving pirates. Serafina laughed, genuine, uninhibited. Caleb, a rare, amused glint, nearly choked on his coffee, a low rumble shaking his chest. It wasn't perfect, this makeshift family, but it was whole. It was real. After supper, as the sun bowed low, Caleb disappeared. He returned with something small, clutched tight. They stood on the porch, just the two of them, children's chatter drifting from the little stick house, a sweet counterpoint to the prairie's silence. Caleb cleared his throat, rough. He looked at her, intense, unwavering, as if she was the only thing keeping the ranch from blowing away. Then, without flair or hesitation, he dropped to one knee on the dusty porch. Awkward, comical for a man his size, but profound gravity. He held out the wooden ring, simple, imperfect, gleaming in fading light. "Serafina," he said, rough but certain, raw with guarded emotions, "will you let us be here forever? Will you let this be our home? All of us?" She didn't cry. Not this time. Tears had come that morning. Now, profound stillness. She simply nodded. One slow, steady nod, a promise made not with words, but with her entire being. Then she reached out, fingers trembling as they met him. No diamonds, no preacher, no bouquet, no grand ceremony, just her hand in his. And that, in its raw, honest simplicity, was more than enough. They were married the next afternoon under the cottonwoods. No guests, no music, no rehearsed vows. Just two shattered people, choosing to stand beside one another in the dust of a harsh, beautiful land. Serafina wore her plainest dress. Caleb wore his cleanest shirt. Silas placed wildflowers on a makeshift table. Lyra, solemn, held the wooden ring like gold. Miss Eliza, the midwife, showed up unexpectedly. She arrived with warm pie and her worn Bible. Having heard whispers and ignored judgment, she said a few words, prayer and promise. The children cheered. Caleb, face soft with emotion, kissed her forehead like sacred ground. That evening, as the sky turned bruised violet and the wind kicked up October dust, the four sat on the porch. Lyra curled in Serafina's lap, heavy with sleep. Silas leaned against Caleb's side, eyes drooping, quiet contentment. No one spoke. The silence was not empty, but full, rich with shared presence. Somewhere beyond the hills wolves howled. Closer, coyotes yipped. Beyond the gate, the world remained, cruel, uncertain, full of unseen dangers, Lial's empty threats, judging whispers. But here, on this small patch of earth, stitched by sweat, loss, and unexpected mercy, they had built something real, a family, not born of blood, but of choice. As the last sun kissed the land, Caleb reached for Serafina's hand. He laced his rough, scarred fingers through hers and whispered the only words he'd ever truly needed, closing one loop and opening another. "Home looks better with you in it." She didn't reply. She just held tighter, a silent affirmation in the gathering dusk, as the vast, unbroken sky stretched above them, full of stars and the quiet, enduring hope of the frontier. The questions of tomorrow, of Lyle's return, of the world's judgment, were still out there. But for tonight, they were home. And that was enough. The story, The Unbroken Sky, is a profound, quiet ballad about healing, hard-won trust, and love born from grit, patience, and brave new beginnings after loss. It is a testament to human resilience on a frontier that tests every fiber. The most potent symbol is the hand-carved wooden ring, not gold, but a rough, imperfect circle. Imperfect, splintered, bearing knife marks. Its simplicity and flaws make it powerful. It symbolizes a love lived, scarred, yet standing. Wood, once alive, once broken, like Caleb and Serafina, becomes a promise of something lasting, grounded, rooted. It is not flashy, not fragile, but real, strong, enduring. It embodies the family's core values: honesty, resilience, a love built piece by imperfect piece. The moment Serafina brushes her thumb against its grain, acknowledging its honesty, is true acceptance. In a world tying family to bloodlines or legal vows, The Unbroken Sky whispers a deeper truth. Family is made, not born. Caleb Jericho is not Lyra's biological father. Serafina Thorne is not Silas's biological mother. Yet, through every scraped knee, fevered night, quiet act of care, warming cold beans, scrubbing troughs, patient teaching of a knot, shared laughter, they become one. Love here is not a grand promise. It is the choice you make each morning to stay, to show up, to believe in someone, to commit to the daily grind of building a life together. It is the subtle, transformative power of consistent, unconditional care that forges bonds stronger than blood. Both Serafina and Caleb are survivors of profound loss. She, a widow forced to wander, burdened by her past and child. He, a giant shattered by grief, living in a fortress of silence. They are broken people, but their story proves you don't need to be whole to be worthy of love, nor perfect to build something beautiful. Their story isn't sweeping, dramatic romance. It's about quiet acts of communion, washing dishes, guarding a sick child, sitting in comfortable silence. It's about building a life, not with perfect pieces, but with whatever's left. Grit, weariness, shared burdens, and making it matter. It's about finding wholeness, not in the absence of scars, but in the shared journey of healing. And perhaps that's what real love looks like on the frontier. Not a wildfire, but a steady flame, tended daily, offering warmth and light against the vast, cold darkness. A love that doesn't promise easy, but promises to stay.